Hey everyone, whether you're a cosplayer, a LARPer, a Ren Fair enthusiast, a Comic-Con regular, or someone that runs one of these events, this video is for you. Because today I want to talk about something that is quietly changing the feel of the events that we love. Something that, if we don't talk about it now, could do lasting damage to the communities that took years and sometimes even decades to build. In fact, it's already doing damage to some of these communities. And I have to talk about generative AI, specifically about how it's showing up at conventions, fantasy festivals, Ren fairs, and I want to do this without pointing fingers and without attacking anyone, because I genuinely believe that most of these organizations making these choices are not doing this out of malice. But good intentions don't cancel out real harm, and there is real harm happening here. So let's talk about it honestly, openly, and with the goal of making these spaces better for everyone. But before we get into AI, let's take a moment to remember what we are actually talking about when we are talking about conventions, fantasy festivals, and Ren fairs. Because these are not just events, they are communities. They are ecosystems, and every single one of them exists because a human being cared deeply enough to make something extraordinary. The cosplayer who spent months hand sewing an outfit. The prop maker who carved a sword from foam and painted it to look like real steel. The illustrator who saved up for months just to afford an artist alley table. The LARPer who wrote pages and pages for a good and unique character backstory. And the Ren Fair performer who learned an actual historical craft because authenticity mattered to them. This is what these spaces are made of. Human labor, human creativity, human passion. And the people doing all of that, they are not a side attraction. They are not a bonus feature. They are part of the reason why anyone shows up at all. So when we talk about organizations using generative AI in these spaces, whether it's for promotional artwork, website graphics, marketing campaigns, social media content, or anything else, we are talking about something that touches the very heart of what these communities are built for and built on. If you're someone who attends one of these events, here's what I want you to understand. When an organization uses AI-generated imagery to promote their events, that is a commission that did not go to a human artist. That is money that stayed in someone's technology budget instead of going into the pocket of a creator who could have really used it. When an organization uses AI tools or actually encourages people to use generative AI for cosplay photography, character art, promotional flyers, or for LARP groups, they are normalizing technology that was built in large part on the unlicensed work of the exact types of artists who populate these communities. Fantasy art, concept art, fan art, and cosplay photography, these are the genres that are fed into the training data of the most popular AI image generators. Without consent, without credit, and absolutely without compensation. And there is something deeply uncomfortable about attending a convention where the poster on the wall, the graphic on the schedule, or the banner at the entrance was generated by a tool trained on stolen creativity in a space that exists to celebrate creativity. If you run one of these events, if you are on the organization committee, if you're the CEO, if you're the social media manager who gets handed a budget and a deadline, I hear you. I understand the pressure. These events are expensive to run. Marketing budgets are tight and deadlines are brutal. And AI image generators are fast and cheap. I genuinely understand the appeal, but I want to ask you something. When you signed up to run a community event built on creative culture, what did you think the responsibility looked like? Because the communities you serve have told you what they think loudly and clearly. And that's what I'm concerned about. Not that organizations make a mistake, but that some of them heard the community speak and chose to ignore it. Now, these conversations are happening everywhere, and communities are winning them. This is not a niche debate. This fight has already been fought in industries far bigger than ours. And the results are clear. Every time that organizations push AI through without listening to their communities, they lost. Or they caused enormous damage before they came around. Let me walk you through some examples. In 2023, Hollywood completely shut down. The Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild went on strike simultaneously. First time actors and writers had walked out together since 1960. Generative AI was one of the central issues. The Writers Guild of America called it an existential crisis to the profession They picketed outside of Netflix, Warner Brothers, and Universal Studios. And A-list names showed up at the picket lines. Bryan Cranston, Olivia Wilde, Kevin Bacon, Mark Ruffalo, just to name a few. And the economic impact was staggering. Studios lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Production shut down across the country. And when it was over, they won. The final agreement included a hard, legally binding protection. AI cannot write or rewrite script. AI-generated materials cannot be considered source materials. These are not guidelines. These are contractual obligations that studios must follow. And what does this tell us? It tells us that when a creative community comes together and speaks with one voice, even the most powerful entertainment companies in the world have to listen. And then, just weeks ago, as I'm filming this, the most prestigious film award in the world drew their own line. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced new rules for the 99th Oscar Awards. Only performances done by humans with their consent are eligible for nominations. Only screenplays that are human-authored qualify. This came after an AI-generated actress called Tilly Norwood started making headlines. SAG-AFTRA responded directly saying Norwood is not an actor. It is a character generated by a computer program that was trained on the work of countless of professional performers. The Academy heard that and they acted. The Oscars, the most watched film awards in the world, have now officially said human creativity is worth protecting. And that is not a small statement. Now let's talk about something closer to our world, because this one hits differently. Wizards of the Coast, the company behind Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, had not one, but multiple AI controversies in 2023 and 2024. First example, AI-generated art was discovered in a published D&D sourcebook called Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. The artist admitted to using AI to polish several illustrations. The community was furious. Wizards pulled back the artwork and replaced it with human-made pieces, and amended their AI contracts to explicitly forbid AI generation. They put out a public statement that said, and I'm quoting directly from their official policy, Magic the Gathering and D&D have been built on innovation, ingenuity, and the hard work of talented people. As such, we require artists, writers, and creatives' contribution to Magic the Gathering and D&D to refrain from using AI-generative tools to create the final products. That seemed to have settled things, but then in January 2024, it happened again. Promotional images for a Magic the Gathering set went up on their official account. The community immediately spotted signs of AI generation in the background. Wizards initially denied it, but then days later, they admitted it and blamed it on an unnamed vendor. The response of the community was not gentle. Even their own contracted artists publicly expressed alarm. One illustrator said he was reconsidering taking commissions from Wizards if they were going to pursue AI despite their stated policy. They apologized, they updated their vendor agreements, but the damage was done because the community had trusted them and that trust has been broken. The lesson, it's not enough to have a policy, but you have to enforce it at every level, because your community is watching and they will notice. Now here's a company that got it right. Games Workshop, the company behind Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar, announced January 2026 a complete ban on generative AI in their entire design process. No AI in their artwork, no AI in their sculpture work, nothing. Their reason was stated simply and clearly: to protect the intellectual property of the human creators behind the product. Now, and this is a billion-euro company. They didn't need to do this. They could have quietly used AI to cut costs and hope nobody would notice. Instead, they made a public commitment in their financial report that their art is made by humans and that matters. And the Warhammer community, which has enormous overlap with LARP culture, fantasy cosplay, and tabletop gaming, responded with genuine warmth and loyalty. That is what it looks like when an organization leads with its values instead of its budget. But then there's Spiel Essen. For those who don't know, Spiel Essen is the world's biggest board game fair, held annually in Germany, hundreds of thousands of attendees. It's enormous. In 2023, they used AI-generated images to market the event. The backlash was immediately and sustained. Industry professionals spoke out, attendees were angry, the criticism spread across every community that follows tabletop gaming. The following year, the managing director gave a public statement and she said, and I want you to really hear this, nobody thought about the backlash of AI. Nobody thought about it. At the world's biggest board game fair, they handed a brief to a marketing agency. The agency used an AI generator and nobody stopped to ask, wait, is this okay with the community that we serve? They scrapped the entire campaign, they brought in real photographers, they cast real models, they rebuilt it from scratch with human creativity at the center. And then they said explicitly that beyond the community backlash, the ongoing legal uncertainty around AI-generated imagery was also a driver for their decision. Which brings me to the next section. Let's be direct about something that cannot be overstated. Generative AI image tools, the ones people are actually using, the one you might have used yourself, were built on scraping millions of images from the internet, without asking the artist, without paying them, and even without telling them that it was happening. Fantasy art, concept art, fan art, cosplay photography, character illustrations, the exact genres and styles that live and breathe in convention spaces were fed into these systems without consent. So when an organization uses AI-generated imagery for their event or worse, actively promotes AI tools to their creative community, they are endorsing a system built on unlicensed work of the very people they claim to celebrate. You cannot honor your artist community one day and use an AI tool trained on their stolen artwork another day. Those two things cannot coexist without contradiction. And I want to stop right here for a moment and make this personal, because I spoke to an artist, Logan, also known by their Instagram handle Leeminarium. Logan has spent nearly a decade working on the convention circuits in Belgium, Netherlands, and the UK. And what he told me really needs to be heard. Artist alley economics are brutal. Table fees alone can rack up to the hundreds of euros, especially for the big and popular conventions. And that is before travel, accommodations, and the cost of printing or producing your stock. There are plenty of artists who are successful, otherwise they wouldn't be doing this. But at the same time, it's very possible to only break even or make a loss. It heavily depends on the convention, the crowd, or even what time of year. And yes, of course, it also depends on what you make as well. With the rise of AI garbage and the looming bubble that's going to burst, starting out for younger artists is rougher than it's ever been. But here's what really hit me. He described watching AI-generated prints appear on artist alley tables. Tables that people wait months on a wait list to get. Set up right in the middle of the hall, filled with human artists whose work these AI systems were trained on. And many of these people buying those prints don't even realize what they're purchasing. Every one of these sales is income that didn't go to a human artist. He shared two examples from just the past 3 months. He received a brief for a job opportunity, but the brief itself was full of AI-generated work. The volume of it, had he had been the one making the art of that brief, would have been 3 months of work. Work a human artist could have been paid for, but wasn't. Then another company asked for an illustration quote, went silent, and later launched an AI-generated campaign instead. 2 jobs, 3 months worth of income. Gone. And he hasn't had no choice but to keep attending the same conventions that pull this, because this is what pays the bills. And he ended with something that really stuck with me. He said making noise works, protesting works, speaking up works, and then Logan said this: art in all its forms is integral to what makes us human. They can't take that away from us if we don't let them. That's why we're having this conversation. So let's talk about something that is very hard to rebuild once it's broken. Trust. Fantasy, LARP, and cosplay are tight-knit communities. People in these spaces are observant. Many of them are trained visual artists themselves. They will notice AI-generated imagery. They will talk about it. And when they find out that an organization they loved used AI, especially after saying nothing or promised not to, the feeling of betrayal is real and lasting. Look at what happened to Wizards of the Coast. They had a policy, they communicated it, and then it happened anyway. The damage to the trust for those incidents lingered far longer than the controversy itself, because people are still talking about it today. 2 to 3 years after it happened. And now I want to talk about something that every organization operating in Europe needs to hear, because this is not going to be just an ethical issue, it's becoming a legal one. The EU Artificial Intelligence Act entered into force the 1st of August 2024. It is the world's first comprehensive legal framework for the use of AI intelligence, and it has teeth. Under Article 50 of the Act, any organization that uses AI to generate or manipulate images, audio, or video for professional or public-facing purposes is required to disclose that the content is AI generated. Clearly, they have to be completely transparent to their audience. That means if you use an AI image generator to create your event posters, your website banners, your social media graphics, images for an email newsletter, and you do not label it as AI generated, you are in violation of EU law. The fines for non-compliance with these transparency obligations are up to 15 million euro or 3% of your total worldwide annual turnover, whichever one is higher. The full enforcement of these transparency rules kicks in the 2nd of August of 2026. That's not far away. Now I want to be clear, for most conventions and festivals, the fine structure will scale to your size. The Act does not make provisions for smaller organizations, but the legal obligation is real regardless of your size. But there's a deeper point here. The EU AI Act exists because regulators recognize that the public has a right to know what they're looking at was made by a machine. The creative community arrived at that same conclusion years earlier on moral grounds. The law is finally catching up to what artists already knew. So if you're an organizer who has been telling yourself that AI is just a tool and nobody really minds, I want you to understand, not only do people mind, it is now potentially legal liability as well as a community one. Of course, we also need to talk about the environmental impact of this. When a convention organization generates an AI image for their social media instead of commissioning a human artist, that single image may have consumed enough energy to charge a smartphone, released up to 800 grams of CO2, and used up to 50 liters of fresh water. Water drawn for cooling systems that may have been depleting drinking supplies from a community somewhere in Spain, Chile, or Texas. This while the United Nations declared a deficit on fresh water. Now, I want to be fair here because most professional illustrators today don't work on paper. They work digitally on a drawing tablet, on a computer software like Procreate or Photoshop. So let's actually do the comparison properly because the numbers are genuinely eye-opening. A standard laptop uses around 30 to 70 watts per hour. Let's be generous and say the digital artist is working on a more powerful desktop setup, around 200 watts per hour. A detailed convention commission, a full character illustration properly rendered might take up to 4 to 6 hours of active work. So we're looking at roughly 0.8 to 1.2 kilowatt hours of electricity for the entire piece, from start to finished artwork. Compare that to a high quality AI image generator, which can use up to 2.0 kilowatt hour for a single generation. That's one image, one prompt, only a few seconds of output. If someone was spending as much time with the AI image generator as the artist was working on the piece, so 4 to 6 hours, the AI image generator would consume up to 30 times as much power as the artist. And the water? A digital artist working at home uses none of the industrial cooling infrastructure that the AI data centers depend on. Their water footprint for that illustration is essentially zero. The AI image? Potentially 5 to 50 liters of fresh water that is being evaporated into a cooling system somewhere. Now here's where I need to pause because there's something happening in this community that I really find hard to reconcile. Go find your ticket for the last convention or Renaissance fair that you attended. Take a good look at it. There is a good chance that it says something like, please consider the environment. Don't print this ticket, but show it on your phone instead. That's lovely. They put it right there, that they want you to know that they care. But the same organization, the one asking you to save a single sheet of paper, very likely opened an AI image generator that same week and produced image after image to promote their event. A new banner, a new poster, a new teaser, graphic, a countdown post, week after week, prompt after prompt. But hey, you didn't print your ticket, so that's fine, right? Now, Look, I don't believe that organizations do this out of bad intentions. The message on the ticket comes from someone who genuinely cares. The social media graphics probably get made by someone else under deadline pressure with a tight budget. These decisions most likely happen in different corners of the organization, on different days, by different people, and nobody sits down to hold them up next to each other. But your community does. And when they do, the contradictions are very hard to unsee. You cannot ask people to protect the planet one printed page at a time while quietly running an AI image pipeline that consumes more energy and water for a few seconds for one image than a human artist uses in hours for also one image. These two things cannot share a brand without one of them ringing completely hollow. If you genuinely care about the environment, and I believe most of you do, that care has to reach all the way into where your marketing images come from. And finally, this one is the most subtle, but possibly the most important for these organizations. Conventions and festivals don't just run events, they set standards for the culture. What they celebrate, what they platform, what they put on their posters and their websites and their social media, that becomes the signal to the community about what matters. The spirit of cosplay, LARP, tabletop gaming, and Renfair culture has always been rooted in the value of making things. The gap-filled seam, the hand-painted detail, the character backstory that took weeks to write. That process is part of the point. When an organization promotes AI as a creative tool in these spaces, they are sending a signal, intended or not, that the process doesn't matter, that shortcuts are fine, that a machine-generated output is preferable to a human-made one. It isn't. It never will be, and the community knows it. Newer members, younger members, people still figuring out what this culture is, take their cues from the organizations that they trust. If these organizations normalize AI, the culture shifts, quietly, gradually, but it shifts. 5 years from now, the event will feel different and nobody can quite put their finger on why. I want to be clear about something before we get into the suggestions. Everything I've said so far is not about doom. It is not about attacking anyone. It is about protecting something that is worth protecting and pointing towards a better way of doing things, because there is a better way and it's genuinely exciting. Here's the single most powerful thing a convention or festival organization can do. Commission your artwork from artists inside your community. Pay them fairly, and when you share it, share who made it. Not buried in the caption, not in small credits at the bottom. Front and center. This artwork is created by. You can find more about their artwork at, and then share the link. Think about what this does. Your entire audience, thousands of people who already care deeply about this kind of creative work, now know this artist's name. They click the link, they follow, they commission. You have changed that artist's career trajectory with a single post. And think about what this does for your event. It tells every person in your community, we see you, we value what you make. This event exists because of people like you. That is a story worth telling. That is a brand worth having. And added to that, it's way more environmental friendly. Games Workshop understood this. When they announced their AI ban, they framed it around their human creators, the people whose talent built the Warhammer universe. That's why I am very proud to tell you that the thumbnail for this video was created by my dear friend Liquorice Art, linked in the description. And here's another idea that costs very little but gains enormously. Instead of using stock photos or AI generated imagery for your promotional materials, feature cosplayers from your own community. Reach out to cosplayers that attended your event. Ask if you can photograph them for the campaign. Credit them visibly and enthusiastically. Their name, their social media handle, a note about what their costume is and how they made it. What happens then? The cosplayer shares your post to their audience. Their followers discover your event. Your reach grows organically, authentically, through real human connection. And the message you share to your community is, we see the work you put in, we think you are worth putting on our poster. Because artists and cosplayers alike deeply value recognition for their hard work, and that will pay off in loyalty. That is incalculably more valuable than any AI generated image. Another idea, Commission artists not just for promotional work, but to be present and visible at the event itself. Live art is extraordinary to watch. An artist creating a piece in real time in the middle of the convention or a festival draws a crowd. People stop, they watch, they connect with the artist. They understand in a visual, direct way what it means to make something by hand. Give those artists a stage. Feature them on your social media during the event. Interview them, share their process, make them part of the story for your event, not just a side attraction, but a centerpiece. Take a page from Games Workshop's book, make a public statement that your event does not use generative AI in its creative materials and that it never will. Put it on your website, say it at the opening ceremony, include it in your Artist Alley terms and conditions. Let your vendors, your sponsors, your volunteers, and your attendees know that this is a value your art organization holds. And then enforce it at every level, including your external vendors and marketing partners. Because as Wizards of the Coast learned the hard way, having a policy means nothing if people you work with don't follow it. Here's a long-term idea that could become a genuine community resource. Build a directory of artists within your community, illustrators, prop makers, costume designers, photographers, cosplayers who are available for commissions and hire. Put it on your website, share it in your newsletter, promote it at your event. When you need something made, go to the directory first and encourage your attendees to do the same. You become the organization that doesn't just run an event. You become the organization that actively supports the creative economy for your community. This is a legacy worth building. So let me end with something simple and direct. To every convention, festival, LARP organization, and Ren Fair committee watching this, your community has spoken. They want human creativity at the center of these spaces. They want to know who made the art for your posters. They want to see real cosplayers on your banner. They want to walk into your event and feel the presence of human hands at every corner in it. Give them that. Not because it's legally required, though increasingly in Europe it will be. But not because it's cheaper. It isn't always, but because it's right. Because these communities exist because people cared enough to make things by hand, and the organizations that serve these communities owe them the same care in return. Commission a human artist. Share their name. Say it out loud. This event was made by people. Again, it's a legacy worth having. To everyone watching this who attends these events, please share this video. Talk about it in your community. When you see an organization using AI imagery, say something respectfully and clearly. Leave a comment. Send an email. Because the WGA strike, the Oscars decision, and the Spiel Essen reversal all prove communities that speak loudly enough actively, actually change things. And to every organization watching, I believe you love your community. I believe that this is why you're doing this. So lead from what you love. The tools to do this well are right in front of you. The artists are already in your community. The cosplayers are already buying your tickets. All you have to do is ask them. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.